Hello everyone and welcome back to the space where we say that I can sleep. Long time no see you guys. I do apologize for the wait. Life does get in the way sometimes, but I have not forgotten about you guys at all. I've just been finding the time amidst trying to take care of myself and my family and just trying to make sure I manage everything because gotta make sure my life and everything is as stable as possible so that I can get everything that I need to get done. I hope you guys understand, and I know some of you guys know exactly what I'm going through, so I don't even need to over explain too much. I hope you guys are taking good care of yourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, in every parts of your life. Make sure you are taking good care of yourselves. Now, as far as where we left off last time, from what I remember, I'm not going to try to look back at the book, I don't want to cheat, but from where we left off, I recall Hua Cheng and Shilian possibly talking about who Hua Cheng's special someone is, who I hope Shilian figures it out that he is that special person, even though he is probably too embarrassed to hope for it because he's one of those who wonders, oh, what if I'm not, and then I embarrass myself, when Hua Cheng is kind of making strong implications. But I guess he's just more forward than Shilian. Shilian doesn't want to embarrass himself. Shilian, come on now, let's figure out what they say. Yeah, so before we get started, as per usual, if you guys are enjoying these readings and would like for me to continue doing these readings, you can show your support by leaving me likes, leaving me comments, sharing my stuff, and following me on all of my platforms like here on YouTube and Spotify at iKenSleep, and Instagram and TikTok at officially.iCanWin, and also the Patreon/Patreon at officially.iCanWin, where you get exclusive content like early access, full-length, uncut audios. So you get to hear all of my mess-ups and hiccups because I edited them all out for the final product because I want it to sound perfect. So you get to hear all of my imperfections. Yippee! So let us ascend once again into heaven official's blessings. Chapter 63, Close the Casket, Coffin Boat Enters the Ghost Sea, Part 2. Then, I'm very envious of that, Shilian replied. Hearing him say so, Hua Cheng gazed over. Shilian stopped eating and said gently, but I can sort of understand your feelings. After a pause, he continued. There was a period in my own life that wasn't easy. Back then, I'd always think about how wonderful it would be if someone could still love me for who I was, even if they saw me rolling in the dirt and couldn't get up. Though I don't know if there's anyone out there like that. And I'm scared of showing that part of myself too. But if it's someone Sanleng yearns for, I think that even if they saw you at your worst, they wouldn't say something like, you're not so great after all. His face grew solemn. To me, the one basking in infinite glory is you. The one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you, not the state of you. I admire Sanleng very much. I want to understand your everything. So I'm very envious that someone has already met that version of you so early on. That kind of affinity can only come by chance. It can't be begged for. And whether that bond should live on is 3 parts fate and 7 parts courage. The campfire crackled, and the two remained silent for a good while. Shilian softly cleared his throat as he rubbed his forehead. Have I said too much? How embarrassing. No, What you said was good. Very right, Hua Cheng replied. Xilian let out a breath of relief and quickly returned to eating the meat. It's not just that. There are many other reasons, Hua Cheng added. Despite Hua Cheng's assurance, Xilian felt he'd said far too much and wanted to stop discussing this subject immediately. He couldn't understand it. Why did he ramble on like that? And why did he encourage Hua Cheng to bravely pursue his beloved? It wasn't like he was the heavenly official who presided over marriage. He could only give a mumble as a reply. After his speech, the air between the two seemed rather delicate, and they quickly finished eating to continue their labor. Soon, the coffin was officially complete. Hua Cheng pushed the newly constructed coffin into the water and hopped in to sit inside. Although it was a long, heavy chunk of wood, it really did float, not sink. They didn't make the coffin particularly wide, and as Xilian lifted his robes to step in, he felt like there wasn't enough space to sit. Muffled roars of thunder boomed above them, and steely clouds rolled. Violet flashes of lightning streaked across the skies. Violet flashes of lightning streaked from the skies, and their explosive noise startled the ears. Thin threads of rain began to fall, and the downpour only grew heavier by the minute. It seemed a storm was approaching. Fortunately, the two didn't slack off while building and had crafted a cover for the coffin as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken long before it to flood with rainwater and sink into the depths. The two met eyes, and Xilian softly mumbled, "Sorry." Hua Cheng didn't say anything more and lay down inside the coffin. Xilian climbed in fully and pulled the cover over them. As if a candle had been blown out, they sank into darkness. The coffin floated into open water and drifted errantly for a while. Pouring rain beat down on the cover, and the two spoke not a word inside. Their bodies were pressed hard against one another, but it couldn't be helped. They were squished into such a narrow space. The waves pushed and pulled them, flipped and flopped them. Xilian used one hand to push against the edge of the coffin to steady himself, trying his best to make more room. His head knocked lightly against the wood with the motion, and Hua Cheng reached out to cradle the back of his head with one hand, shielding it from further bumps. He rested the other hand on his back and pressed him on his chest. Xilian didn't even dare to breathe harshly. "Sanlang, how about we switch it up?" "Switch what?" Hua Cheng asked. "You on top and me on the bottom," Xilian replied. "Top, bottom. Isn't it all the same?" Hua Cheng asked. Xilian was afraid he was too heavy. "Our journey will take at least a day. Your body is only 17 or 18 right now, isn't it? And I'm a martial god. I'm very heavy." Before he could finish his sentence, he was forced to exclaim, "Sanlang, don't just suddenly turn big." Although it was hard to see in the dark, they were pressed together so tightly that Xilian could feel Hua Cheng's body transform. While the change was minute, he still sensed it and assumed Hua Cheng had probably transformed back to his true form. Sure enough, when Hua Cheng spoke again, his laugh was deeper, truly his real voice. Hua Cheng lay helplessly on his chest, But after the change, the nebulous awkwardness lightened a bit. Hoping to shift his body and change position, he raised his leg slightly, but Huachang abruptly stopped laughing. "Don't move," he said grimly. Shilian froze. There was a loud noise, and the coffin sank violently. Shilian was bewildered. "What's going on?" Soon after, there was another roaring sound, and the two were forcibly tossed around inside the coffin. It seemed their vessel had rolled over. Thank goodness there weren't any leaks, but that couldn't be guaranteed if they were attacked again. Huachang pressed him down. "Something's got its eye on this coffin boat." As soon as he spoke, the two felt a familiar weightlessness, and their positions abruptly changed from lying to upright. The coffin boat rose up, then swiftly plunged, flipping over once more. Huachang's arms were locked in the vice grip around Shilian's waist, with one hand still shielding his head. "Hold on tight to me," he shouted. If they were in an open space, Shilian could manage even if the spinning were 3 times as violent. The problem was they were trapped inside a narrow, tight space. They couldn't stretch out their limbs, and they had no idea what was happening outside. All he could do was tense and alert while anxiety rolled within. "What if the coffin breaks?" Shilian wondered. "Don't worry. Even if it breaks, I'm here. You won't sink," Huachang reassured. They were firmly pressed against each other, and Huachang nearly brushed his lips against his hair as he spoke. Shilian could even feel the slight tremble of his Adam's apple. It made his mind start to wander, but his attention was stolen again by another wave of violent rolling. The boat was like a toy being jostled about by a toddler, and it shook and swung ceaselessly with no other choice. Shilian embraced Huachang tightly with one hand, bracing the other on the coffin wall. Through the chaos, the two were hoisted and dropped, flipped and flopped into who knows how many different positions. Their bodies collided and rubbed together in countless ways. Even though Huachang had the appearance of a young man, only after this tumble did Shilian realize that Huachang was solid and hard from top to bottom. Shilian was seeing stars from the torment. When the shaking finally eased for a moment, he found that Huachang was now on top of him. He pressed down heavily and crushed the breath out of him. Shilian managed to raise his hand and grab on to the strong forearm beside his body that Huachang was using to prop himself up. His head spun, and he groaned softly. "Is it over yet?" For some reason, Huachang didn't respond. Before Shilian finished his thought, his breathing hitched. He had very suddenly noticed that a certain part of his body had experienced a somewhat unusual shift. In that split second, Shilian felt more incredulous than if he'd seen an iron tree bloom, and at least his mind wouldn't be so blank in such a scenario. Mortifying shame and embarrassment battered him more violently than the tempest battering the coffin outside. Shilian closed his knees in panic, but that didn't appear to be the right move. It seemed he touched something he shouldn't have, and it elicited a brusque grunt from Huachang. "Don't move!" The grunt was deep and sharp, and Shilian hurriedly flattened his legs again. If he didn't close his knees, he was scared Huachang might notice his body's reaction, in which case he might as well just smash his head against the coffin and die. He could have explained it away as an unavoidable natural reaction, but there was already that awkward incident on the island. He could say it was unintentional once or twice, but how could he possibly explain himself after the 3rd or 4th time? Trapped in such a dire situation, Shilian blurted, "No, Sanlang, don't touch me." There was a brief silence, then Huachang said gravely, "Very well. Let's break out of here." It was like he had been absolved. Shilian cried, "Go!" With another vicious attack of weightlessness, the coffin that contained the two was thrust into the air. Just as it was, Huachang and Shilian smacked their palms on either side of the coffin in unison, and it shattered instantly. The two broke free and leapt out under the moonlight. Shilian looked back and saw a giant water dragon dangling the broken pieces of the coffin from its mouth. It let out a roar beneath the pouring rain, baring its sharp teeth as if raging at the empty coffin it had presumed was full of food. This water dragon must have been thrashing the coffin boat about with its mouth, snapping it here and twisting it there. The coffin boat had drifted at sea for a while, but the water dragon had dragged it back inland. The two landed back on Blackwater Island. There were two new figures on the beach, Watermaster Wudu and General Pei. Shi Wudu's hands were still in a seal, and he faced the storm like he was trying to call the water dragon over. Pei Ming patted his shoulder. "Watermaster Shang, just take it easy, will you? This round is over, but who knows when the next will come. Save your energy for now." Turned out, the sudden pouring rain was the accompaniment to Shi Wudu's heavenly tribulation. The storm was calming down, and Shi Wudu whirled around with a flick of his sleeves to regard Huachang and Shilian. "What's with you two?" he questioned. Pei Ming just had to give his input as well. "Yeah, Your Highness. Why don't you two explain yourselves? What's going on? What were you two doing in there?" When the coffin boat exploded, their tight embrace was put on display for all to see. Shilian blinked. He was about to speak when he abruptly realized that after tumbling around inside the narrow coffin boat, their hair was mussed and their clothes were disheveled. The two of them looked as improper as one could imagine. Shilian wiped the rain off his face and found that his cheeks were burning. Huachang took a step forward to shield him. A moment later, Shilian softly cleared his throat. "Nothing's going on. Just the coffin was too small." Shi Wudu was puzzled. "I wasn't asking about that." Pei Ming pointed at all the leftover wood pieces they left behind on the beach. "You made that coffin yourselves, right? Why didn't you build a bigger one?" The coffin boat was designed by both Huachang and Shilian, and it seemed neither of them had considered making it bigger at the time. Shilian could only laugh awkwardly. "You're right. Did my lords only just drift to this island?" "Yes," Pei Ming replied. "Watermaster Shang battled the current of the Blackwater Demon Lair, and we only just made it here. Didn't expect to see a coffin sailing the waters of the Blackwater Demon Lair. What a curious sight." Shilian could only feel himself tense, and he forced a smile. "Curious indeed." "You." Shi Wudu turned to Huachang and narrowed his eyes. "On this ship, didn't you say that the only thing that doesn't sink in the Blackwater Demon Lair is wood that carried the dead?" Pei Ming drew his sword. "Yeah," he said leisurely. "There's the wood, so where's the dead?" Huachang smiled too. "If you're so concerned with who's dead here, I suggest you go kill yourself. Pei Ming pointed his blade at him. Such arrogance! As expected of Crimson Rain Sought Flower. As suspected, he had already guessed. Hua Cheng burst out laughing, and seeing that a fight was about to start, Shilian stepped protectively in front of Hua Cheng. My lords, please calm yourselves. You can be completely assured that Sanlang is on this journey out of generosity alone. Sanlang? Pei Ming wondered. I've never heard of Lord Crimson Rain Sought Flower ranking among the boys of some house. And generosity? Your Highness, are you sure that's the word to describe his intentions? Shi Wudu had to stand in the spotlight at all times, so he pushed Pei Ming aside. Are you the one who's been meddling this entire trip? He demanded sharply. What is your intention in luring us here to the Blackwater Demon Lair? Where's Qing Xuan? This is someone else's territory. Do you think I want to be here? Hua Cheng answered. Shilian was already used to these kinds of situations and changed the subject with practical ease. Has Lord Windmaster not been found yet? Didn't General Pei go looking for him and the Earthmaster? Pei Ming shrugged. I almost fished them out, but one of Water Master Shang's waves came along and washed them away. Mind your misleading tongue, Pei Shang, Shi Wudu snapped. If I didn't raise waves and simply allowed those things in the water to keep attacking over and over, you wouldn't have been able to find them in the first place. Calm down, Shilian soothed quickly. Lord Windmaster is with Lord Earthmaster, so there shouldn't be any need to worry. Shi Wudu humphed. Earthmaster? What good is that Earthmaster? Mediocre and unaccomplished. He's not a martial god either, and his spiritual powers aren't as strong as Qing Xuan's. He trailed off as he seemed to remember that Qing Xuan no longer possessed any spiritual powers. His face fell, and he grew silent. Every profession has its experts, Shilian thought. Although Ming Yi wasn't a martial god and his spiritual powers weren't terribly strong, he wasn't as bad as the Watermaster described. The skills that Earthmaster demonstrated at Banyue Pass weren't bad at all. Even if he wasn't the best, he wasn't the worst either. Don't worry too much yet, Pei Ming assured as well. Lord Earthmaster should be able to take care of things as long as they don't run into Demon Xuan. Hua Cheng laughed. Your heavenly tribulation has pursued you all the way to the Blackwater Demon Lair. You guys have already made a huge mess of his territory. Do you really think the master of the domain hasn't noticed? Shi Wudu's face twitched, and he retrieved a golden longevity lock pendant from underneath the collar of his robes. Watermaster Shang, did something happen? Pei Ming asked. The golden longevity lock vibrated in Shi Wudu's palm. Qing Xuan is close by, and he's injured. Shilian took a look at the golden pendant. It looked exactly the same as the one Qing Xuan had been wearing that day, the one he removed to build the protection array and left behind in the yen. Is Lord Windmaster still wearing his longevity lock? I remember he removed it before. I picked it up and put it on him again, Shi Wudu said. The two longevity locks had been forged by the brothers' golden essence. When they were near one another and one was hurt, the locks would call out to each other. The closer they were, the stronger the resonance. This was a natural attribute of the locks and not a spell, so it was unaffected by the demon lair's spiritual field. Shi Wudu removed the longevity lock pendant from his neck and dangled the chain from his hand. He held his arm out straight and slowly turned in a circle. When he faced a certain direction, the vibration of the golden lock abruptly grew stronger. It was calling them into the forest, toward the unfathomably deep heart of the lonely island. "Looks like Qingxuan is here," Shiwudu said grimly. With that, he strode into the forest with large strides. Naturally, Pei Ming followed along. Shilian thought about their present situation. Since the Wind and Earth Masters were both on the island and the Wind Master seemed to be injured, finding them should be their priority. They could worry about the rest later. "My lords, there are little ghost minions hiding in the forest. Be careful of ambushes." Hua Chang came along as well. Shilian wanted to grab his hand, but he remembered his disgraceful state in the coffin boat, and his outstretched hand shrank back in spite of himself. In the end, he tugged a corner of Hua Chang's sleeve, daring not to look at his face. Pei Ming, however, looked back frequently and appeared to be very interested. "Your Highness and Crimson Rain sought flower. The two of you sure are stuck together like glue. A ghost king like yourself, following us so openly? Aren't you even going to try to avoid suspicion?" "What is General Pei saying?" Shilian replied easily. "Under these circumstances, it's much less suspicious if he comes along. If my lords run into any danger, you may suspect him. How else can he hope to clear his name? He made it to the rank of Supreme, so what difference does it make if he's with us or not? Wouldn't it be easier for him to create a clone?" Pei Ming said. He had just spoken when a sharp sound tore through the air. Pei Ming raised his hand and caught an arrow. "So there is something. That was close. Watermaster Shang, be careful." Before he could finish, there were more swishing sounds, and several more arrows came flying toward him. Pei Ming swept his sword and wondered. "What the heck?" Shiwudu laughed out loud. "Pei Shang, I think you'd best watch yourself instead." Then he quickened his pace. An ambush of arrows was nothing to be afraid of. It was simply an annoyance. Pei Ming irritably flattened a patch of shrubbery and soon plucked out a few more little minions. "You guys got guts!" The ghosts were scrawny and sallow-skinned, the lowest of lackeys. They were terrified of the general. And cowered in little balls as they hung from his hand, begging for mercy non-stop. They were gatekeepers after all, so attacking intruders was what they had to do. Pei Ming let them go after a few threats. When they ran into more cunning and vicious minions later on, Pei Ming squashed those ghoulies into a ball. And dribbled it as they made their way. The four of them brushed away branches and pushed their way through bushes, hiking through the dense forest for what seemed like ages. As they walked, the resonant cries of the golden lock in Shiwudu's hand grew louder and louder. Finally, they reached a large clearing at the heart of the forest. At the center of it was a lake, and the four walked toward it. Suddenly, Pei Ming spoke up. "Crimson Rain sought flower. If you continue with these pranks, I won't tolerate you much longer." Both Hua Chang and Shilian looked at him, then at each other. Pei Ming frowned. "If you want to fight, then challenge me like a man. I'm not like those 33 heavenly officials. I'm not afraid of you. Shoving me around is pointless." Hua Cheng arched his brows. Guga, you have to believe me. I've got nothing to do with this. Shilian intervened. General Pei, he doesn't play meaningless pranks like this. Pei Ming was doubtful. Really? Shilian grew alarmed. Be careful. Something else on this island might be stirring up trouble. Pei Ming stopped talking. Right then, Shi Wudu slowed his pace. It's here. The golden longevity lock seemed to cry hardest here, meaning Shi Qingxuan was somewhere close. But this area was open with nowhere to hide. There was nothing here besides the lake. Could there be an underground palace? Pei Ming wondered. Shi Wudu stared at the surface of the water, and Shilian said, or it could be at the bottom of the lake. But a lake at Blackwater Island shouldn't be entered carelessly, lest one never come up again. The surface of the lake was calm and unrippled. It looked like a giant mirror, reflecting the blanched moon that hung high in the starless, cloudless night sky. The four circled the edge of the lake. Shilian was still weighing options about how to investigate the lake bottom when a terrified scream ripped through the night air. Shi Wudu was leading the group, and Pei Ming was bringing up the rear. The three in front looked back to see that the screamer was the little ghost that Pei Ming had captured on the road. Its scrawny, bony body stood in place, but its head was gone, and black blood spurted almost 3 meters from its neck. Its head was flying through the air, screeching. General Pei, why did you kill it so suddenly? Shilian asked. Pei Ming, however, exclaimed, No! Before he could explain, his body crumbled, and he dropped to one knee. Hua Cheng laughed. There's no need for such a grand apology. Pei Ming's expression was stark bewilderment. Watermaster Shang, watch out! He shouted. Watch out for what, though? Other than the four of them by the lake, there was nothing here. It was as if Pei Ming had been bound by something invisible. Shi Wudu was rushing over to help when a chilling light flashed in front of him. He dodged just in time, though the attack still managed to draw a trail of blood across one of his cheeks. He wiped it with his hand, and his face changed. Shilian stood firm in front of Hua Cheng to shield him. An invisibility spell? Pei Ming finally broke free of his formless constraints. Gather around! Don't split up! He shouted. But Shi Wudu didn't care. The moment he heard the longevity lock start crying again, he charged around the lake, frantically calling out for his brother. Qingxuan! Qingxuan! It was mayhem, but amidst the ruckus, Shilian noticed something quite peculiar. The area along the lake shore was open and empty, with no notable landmarks to be seen, but the shore reflected on the lake's surface showed a different story. In the reflection, a charcoal black building loomed on the edge of the water. The building was cold and sinister, more like a prison than a place where someone lived. It had no door, only a set of windows set high in the walls and sealed by unforgiving iron bars. A pale white hand reached from between those iron bars, waving desperately like it was begging for help. Shilian's head shot up, and he looked to the shore opposite of him. There was nothing there aside from Shi Wudu darting around with the longevity lock. When he looked down again, the reflection clearly showed a sinister iron prison. Shi Wudu was right in front of the building, but he couldn't see it. My lords! Shilian blurted out. I found it! Look! Just then, His pupils shrank. Something new was reflected within Blackwater Lake. A shadowy figure had appeared soundlessly behind him and Huachan.